The flashing lights, the pulsing music, the clinking of glasses. A typical night out. But what if I told you that behind the glamour of the nightlife you know and love, a dark and powerful organization has been pulling the strings for decades? What if the very places you go to escape were in fact built on a foundation of crime, corruption, and fear? This isn't a scene from a movie. This is the hidden history of how the Mafia secretly took control of nightclubs and bars, turning them into cash cows for their illegal empires. But how did they manage to operate in plain sight, turning dirty money into billions without getting caught? The answer is more shocking than you can imagine. To understand the Mafia's stranglehold on nightlife, we have to go back to the 1920s, Prohibition. When the U.S. government banned the sale of alcohol, they didn't stop people from drinking. They just created a golden opportunity for organized crime. Gangsters like Al Capone became legends, not just for their ruthlessness, but for their business acumen. They established thousands of illegal bars known as speakeasies, hidden from the public eye. These weren't just dingy back rooms. The most famous speakeasies, like the Cotton Club in Harlem, were glamorous hotspots, attracting the rich and famous. But behind the jazz bands and dancing, a sinister operation was taking place. The Mafia wasn't just selling illegal booze, they were building a blueprint for controlling an entire industry. They learned how to manage venues, how to deal with law enforcement, and most importantly, how to make a staggering amount of money. But here's the twist. When Prohibition ended in 1933, you'd think the Mafia's control over bars would disappear. Instead, it only grew stronger. Why? Because they had discovered the perfect front for their criminal activities. So why were nightclubs and bars the perfect business for the mob? The answer is simple: cash. In a world of illegal gambling, loan sharking, and drug trafficking, the Mafia was swimming in dirty money. They needed a way to make that money look legitimate, a process we now call money laundering. Imagine a mob-owned bar. On an average night, it might make a few $1,000s from actual customers, but the owner, a Mafia associate, could claim it made 10 times that amount. The extra cash, sourced from their illegal rackets, would be deposited into the bar's bank account, and just like that, dirty money became clean. There was no paper trail, no way for the authorities to prove the money wasn't from legitimate drink sales. But the Mafia's control went far beyond just owning the establishments. They infiltrated every aspect of the nightlife industry. They controlled the jukeboxes, the cigarette machines, and even the liquor supply, often providing watered-down or stolen alcohol at premium prices. They used their influence to control the unions that supplied workers to these venues, ensuring their own people were in key positions. This is where things get even darker. The Mafia didn't just want to own the bars, they wanted to eliminate all competition. If a new, legitimate bar opened up in their territory, they would use intimidation and violence to shut it down or take it over. They created a monopoly, ensuring that a night out in many cities meant putting money directly into the pockets of organized crime. But what about the police? Surely they would have put a stop to this. This is where the story takes a truly corrupt turn. The Mafia wasn't fighting law enforcement. In many cases, they were working with them. The mob paid off police precincts, sometimes thousands of dollars a month, to turn a blind eye to their operations. In exchange for these bribes, the police would tip off the bar owners before a raid, giving them time to hide their illegal liquor and get customers out of the building. It was a well-oiled machine of corruption, with the Mafia and the police working hand in hand. But the Mafia's most sinister tactic was yet to come. They found a way not only to profit from their customers, but to control their lives. How did they do it? Through a dark and twisted form of exploitation. In the 1960s, the Mafia saw another business opportunity, one that society had turned its back on. At the time, it was illegal for bars to serve alcohol to gay patrons. This marginalized community had few places to gather safely. The Mafia, seeing a vulnerable and untapped market, stepped in. The Genovese crime family in particular began to control the majority of gay bars in Greenwich Village. One of the most famous of these was the Stonewall Inn. In 1966, a member of the Genovese family, Tony Lauria, known as Fat Tony, bought the Stonewall Inn and turned it into a gay bar. But this was no act of charity. The conditions in these bars were often terrible, with watered-down drinks, no running water behind the bar, and a lack of fire exits. The Mafia was exploiting a community that had nowhere else to go. And then came the blackmail. The mob would single out wealthy patrons who were not openly gay and threaten to expose their sexuality to their families and employers. This became one of the most profitable aspects of their control over these bars. They were not just laundering money, they were ruining lives for profit. The Mafia's control seemed absolute. They had the cash, the connections, and the muscle to do whatever they wanted. But they made one crucial mistake. They underestimated the very people they were exploiting. On June 28, 1969, the police raided the Stonewall Inn. But this time, something was different. The patrons, tired of the constant harassment and exploitation, fought back. The Stonewall riots, as they came to be known, were a turning point, not just for the gay rights movement, but for the Mafia's control of the nightlife scene. The riots brought unwanted attention to the mob's activities. The public was now aware of the corruption and exploitation that had been happening in the shadows. But was this the end of the Mafia's reign over nightclubs and bars? Not by a long shot. While the Stonewall riots and increased law enforcement pressure in the following decades did weaken the Mafia's grip, they didn't eliminate it. The mob is adaptable. They are survivors. When one door closes, they find another way in. In the 1980s and 1990s, the federal government used the RICO Act to dismantle the leadership of many mafia families. This, combined with the changing nature of the nightlife industry, forced the mob to evolve. They moved from outright ownership to more subtle forms of control. They still have a hand in loan sharking to bar owners, controlling vending machine contracts, and infiltrating the construction companies that build new clubs. Their influence is more hidden now, more corporate, but it's still there. The ghost of the Mafia still haunts the halls of many of our favorite night spots. Think about it. The next time you're in a club, look around. Who owns the building? Who supplies the liquor? Who controls the security? The answers might lead you down a rabbit hole you never expected. The story of the Mafia's control of nightclubs and bars is a story of power, corruption, and the dark side of the American dream. It's a reminder that even in the most glamorous of settings, a hidden world of crime can be operating just beneath the surface. From the speakeasies of the Prohibition era to the gay bars of the 1960s and beyond, the Mafia has left an undeniable mark on the nightlife industry. They built an empire on our desire to have a good time, and in doing so, they changed the face of organized crime forever. The most shocking fact of all? Many of the tactics pioneered by the Mafia in the nightlife industry are still being used by criminal organizations around the world today. The blueprint they created is still being followed. If you found this story insane, imagine what's coming next. Subscribe for more Mafia secrets.